great to see so many people here today. This is our, we started off a week ago today in Surrey in the morning. We're in Montague in the afternoon. And then we're up in O'Leary on Thursday and Summerside on Friday. And good turnouts at all the meetings. So it's been great to get the response we have from growers in all the different sectors. And processing firms and custom warehouses, whatever, and trucking firms. It's been good to see the turnout. So as Alec mentioned, what I want to do is give you a bit of background in the beginning here to kind of set the stage for how we got to where we were in the summer when the Provincial Department of Agriculture was delivering the disinfection program to where we are now, which is basically with the disinfection becoming the responsibility of growers or whoever needs that service. So over the years, the PEI government through the Agriculture Department has assumed responsibility for the disinfection program, and that was the admin, the staffing, and the biggest part of the funding. When the numbers were put on the table this summer, we learned that the cost recovery that was having with the trucks that were disinfected going through Borden was giving the province about a third of the funding they needed to run the disinfection program. And of course, cleaning has always been the responsibility of the party requiring disinfection, and that certainly will remain so in future. And in my opinion, and I know Dr. Sulky de Boer will say the same thing, the cleaning is the biggest part of the job. If the cleaning is done, you've accomplished about 98% of what you need to do. The disinfection is just simply putting the finishing touch on it. Legislation, up until this point, and I guess it continues on, the province has the Plant Health Act and the potato regulations. Up until the end of December, all commercial vehicles transporting potatoes out of the province had to be disinfected, and all equipment being brought into the province that had previously been used elsewhere for potato work by provincial regulation were subject to disinfection. And the other big part, of course, of what the province did and continues to do is the BRR decontamination and containment whenever there's a ring rot case on a potato farm here. So the sections of the regs covering disinfection of the outgoing commercial vehicles and the incoming used equipment have been revoked. The province had those amendments made to the potato regulations before the end of 2015, and it was on that basis that they were able to stop disinfecting trucks effective December the 31st. And of course, I'm sure everybody knows by now, it was the scheduled increase in the commercial vehicle disinfection fee from $10 to $30 this summer that started the ball rolling and kind of got us to where we are today. The province was looking for full cost recovery, and by increasing that truck fee to $30, I mean, that was basically the simplest way to accomplish that, and but that really wasn't acceptable to the industry. BRR, decontamination and containment, the provincial department will maintain, there's a whole section in the potato regulations having to do with this, and the provincial department will maintain its regulatory oversight of any future bacterial ring rot occurrence within the province. And that's, as it always has been, whether that's in affecting seed, table stock, or processing potatoes. And that's something that I like to point out is special as far as PEI is concerned. I don't think you'll find any other province of Canada or any state in the US where they grow potatoes that has any regulatory control over ring rot that's outside of a seed farm. But here, the province will regulate ring rot whether it's on a seed farm or a non-seed farm, which is of course, is great. The only change being that when the definition of disinfection in the provincial regs is the application of the disinfection by somebody appointed by the minister. And in future, in a ring rot situation, the affected party, whether it be a grower or whomever, will have to name somebody who's going to do the disinfection. And that could be an employee of the farm. It could be a third-party service provider that's being hired to do that. But the farmer, let's say, will name that person, and the minister will appoint that person for the disinfection connected with that ring rot case. And when that disinfection's done, that appointment will end. For all the disinfection that will be done by every farmer, just routine disinfection, there's no appointment needed for that. There are pesticide application regulations within the province, as you well know, for all the spraying you do in your fields, but the application of a disinfectant is exempted from those regs, okay? The other thing to note provincially is things or scenarios that are officially regulated by the province. And it's never included a lot of the work that you've had the provincial people involved in. Routine on-farm premise and equipment disinfection, disinfection of machinery moving within the province or off-island, and the disinfection of vehicles hauling potatoes within the province. A lot of that, of course, there's been a ton of that disinfection work done by the provincial people, but it's been done as a service to farmers. It's never been a regulated piece of activity, and there was no fees directly associated with that. The only way that the cost, part of the cost of that was recovered was through that $10 fee for the commercial trucks. So that's sort of the background as far as the provincial department is concerned. CFIA also has some concern about cleaning and disinfection, and that, of course, mostly pertains to the seed certification program, which they administer under the Seeds Act and the Seeds Regulations Part 2. And in those regulations, there are scenarios where a grower must, and the wording I have here I take directly from the regs, where a grower must verify or demonstrate to CFIA that a cleaning and disinfection has been done. And one of those situations is with a new seed grower, either somebody starting to grow potatoes for the very first time this spring, or somebody who's been let's say a processing potato grower and wants to become a seed grower. You have to approach CFIA and work with them to get a cleaning and disinfection. You do it, but they want to oversee it. The next one is a seed grower whose operation is affected by ring rot, but who wants to do a cleanup and disinfection and get back into the seed business. CFIA wants assurance that that's done properly. Another scenario is where the equipment, let's say used by a seed farm, is being used off that farm, and it's being shared or whatever, and it's coming back and forth. There is a way that can happen with cleaning and disinfection every time before that equipment comes back to a seed farm. Not something that happens here at all that I'm aware of, but in some parts of the country that could happen, where somebody could say, this is my seed production unit. I have another bunch of potatoes here that are for processing or table stock, and they're kind of separate units, but you can move back and forth with cleaning and disinfection. And of course, the one that probably people are pretty familiar with is the bulk movement certificate, record of bulk movement. For seed potatoes being shipped in bulk, which is basically anything other than potatoes in a 50 kg or smaller bag that's sewed shut and tagged. So if potatoes are bulk on the floor or in a tote, in a wooden tote or a polypropylene tote, whatever, those are all bulk. And the grower, the seed seller, when he or she signs the bulk certificate, is making the statement that the vehicle carrying this shipment has been disinfected before loading with a product that's registered for ring rot. So those are the situations where CFIA requires you to do cleaning and disinfection. I talked to CFIA when we got into this to say now that we don't have provincial involvement, and I know over the years we relied a lot on the work done by the provincial disinfection workers and the records that they kept. So I wanted to find out from CFIA just what would satisfy them here now. So the response I got was that CFIA adheres to a non-prescriptive approach where the regulated party, and this is not only for seed potatoes, but it's for all the programs that CFIA administers, whether it be meat or dairy or poultry, or there's 14 programs I think that CFIA regulates, and there's a lot of cleaning and disinfection in all those programs. So they say that a regulated party can make use of options as long as he or she can, at the end of the day, show that the standard has been met. For C&D, there are various ways for a grower to demonstrate that it has occurred, and one is including the maintenance of a log, and we'll talk about that afterwards. In the handout there, there's a log that we developed, and we'll go over with you. CFIA's position is that cleaning and disinfection may be completed by the grower, by a third party, or a combination thereof. And I mean, that's basically the way CFIA is dealing with the seed potato industry and all the rest of Canada. There's no provincial government involvement in potato cleaning and disinfection in any other Canadian province. We're basically the last province where there was that provincial involvement. The one that would have most closely resembled PEI over the years would have been New Brunswick, for a couple of reasons. One being the big seed markets that both provinces had over the years in Europe. And as the big markets like Italy and Portugal and Greece joined the European Common Market, ring rot was quarantinable, so there had to be all kinds of measures taken to reduce the incidence of ring rot. And I should have said right at the start, I mean, when you look at the old records back 50, 60, 70 years ago, when there were up to 3,500 potato farms in PEI, some years there'd be 250 and 350 of those potato farms with bacterial ring rot. So there had to be measures taken back in those times to get the incidence of ring rot reduced. So New Brunswick was the one that, like I said, most closely resembled here. The province there got out of it a number of years ago, and then I talked to the potato agency to see what took its place, and the agency, of course, is the twin of like the board here. And at one point, the agency actually set up a disinfection service with a staffer and a unit and so on. And they've discontinued that because the uptake was so small at the end of it that there was no need of them providing the service. The farmers were doing it themselves. They weren't calling the potato agency looking for disinfection. And as far as we're aware, there's no state administered, staffed, or funded C&D program within the United States. I mean, there it would be, again, growers who would be, as far as I know, looking after it. There was some concern out of the U.S. this fall with all the bad press we were getting about what was happening to disinfection. And that was concerning to a lot of us at the start. But then I guess it became clear that what they were really worried about was the potato wart. Because they knew that the provincial department had a contract to do cleaning and disinfection associated with potato wart with funding but from CFIA. And that program is not changing. That'll continue. So the only part of that provincial program that's going by the wayside is the disinfection associated with bacterial ring rot. So a few weeks ago too, when we were getting ready for this, we did an online survey of growers to see what, kind of get a feel for how people saw things being done in the future. One of the questions we asked was about on-farm disinfection. How did people see it being done after the provincial program was stopped? 81% of respondents, we did get a good response too. I think there were like 80 some responses out of the total number, and Ryan here tells me that's a pretty average response to a survey. 81% of respondents could foresee doing it themselves or their workers after the provincial program was gone. 19% of respondents said they thought they might be looking to hire a third party to help them with it. Future C&D of potato transport vehicles or used equipment. 48% of respondents could foresee doing it themselves when it arrived. 45% of respondents could foresee instructing that it be done before it left where it was coming from. And 7% could foresee hiring a service provider. The other thing we mentioned in the survey was thoughts on the keeping a small-scale disinfection facility at Borden, operated on a not-for-profit fee basis by the board. 75% of respondents were supportive, and there were some comments there. Maybe a mobile service. That's something that certainly will be thought about in the future, depending on demand. Support for Borden and Carleton was dependent on the price. Well, at this point, the price is the same as it was when the province was doing it, which is $10 plus the HST. And growers, said they would like to see money put in a fund for assistance to set up for disinfection, and that's happening. Just to make it clear what's going on in Borden, there's no longer any mandatory disinfection of trucks as far as the province is concerned. CFIA has that requirement that bulk loads of seed be disinfected. So there won't be anybody at Borden looking for truck disinfection slips. There is a service being offered, a disinfection service being offered out of the Borden inspection facility. The provincial person who was there, the province has agreed to keep that person on staff for the board for 3 months. So that person was back to work on January the 2nd, doing doing disinfection work. But even after that person is done at the end of March, like, that service is going to continue and be staffed and operated strictly by potato board staff in that building. So any one of you who has a truck coming into the province and you want that truck disinfected before it comes to your farm, well, there's the place to have it done. That's certainly one option for you, is just make sure the trucker knows when you're coming through Borden, call in there and get disinfected. So going forward, cleaning and disinfection will be the responsibility of the party wanting the activity done. And that could be, like I said, a grower, processor, trucking firm, custom warehouse, whomever. C&D can be accomplished on your own or by utilizing a third-party service provider, one of which is that service that's being offered at Borden. There have been a few other people attending some of our meetings who are sort of feeling things out to see if there's going to be any demand for disinfection service being offered by somebody private, and if there is some potential there, I'm sure that those people will be setting up and they'll be available to you. And there will be provincial funding available under a GF2 program to assist with setting up on-farm disinfection. And all I can tell you at this point is that is funding of up to, it's 50% of up to $2,000 that you might spend on equipment to gear up for disinfection. So there'd be $1,000 payout on those, maximum $1,000 payout on those costs.
Dave, it's probably important to note too, the critical date of March 31st too on that.
Yes, the fiscal year will be the end of, yes, of purchases. And I'm not sure, Greg, whether we can even, I'm not sure what the eligible start date is. Could people start purchasing now, or do we have to?
Yeah, I expect we'll,
Yeah, I would think they could start right away.
Okay.
Because the program's all going, it's just changed a little bit to meet up with this.
Okay. And Ken is going to be talking to you later on about, just to give people an idea what that kind of equipment could look like. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and Sulky will give you his presentation, and then Ken, and then I'll finish up with a few other things we want to talk about. Are there any questions to this point on what we're doing and how things are going?